So today we are here taking off our treatments. So it's really important, no matter what treatment you use, if you're using strips, if you're using Formic Pro, anything like that, that you come back after your treatment period is over and you remove the leftovers of the treatment from the hive. You definitely don't want to leave them in over the winter. That is a really great way to get Varroa mites that are resistant to different treatments. So if Varroa mites develop a resistance to any of the chemicals that you're using, then those chemicals won't be effective against them anymore. That's really not what we want, because we want to make sure that we have as many tools in our toolbox as possible for fighting against Varroa mites. So we really want to make sure that no resistance is developing. So we have Formic Pro on right now, so that means that the treatment period was 2 weeks, so we're back after 2 weeks to take them out. Even though the treatment period is over, there are still definitely going to be chemical residues on these pads, so we don't want to be touching them with our bare hands. We want to make sure that we are wearing nitrile gloves so that we don't get any of that chemical on our skin in contact with us. So I'm just gonna take the pads out and then close her up. Any treatment leftovers we want to make sure that we are disposing of properly. We don't just want to leave them sitting out in the bee yard or anything like that. We're going to put them in a plastic bag and dispose of them properly. Okay, so our treatments are now off, so I'm just going to close this up. We don't have any supers on anymore. We are past that point. We had the supers on with the Formic Pro to give them some ventilation, but now that the Formic is off, we don't need them anymore. So I'm going to put the inner cover down. I'm then going to put our queen excluder on top of the inner cover. We just do that because we like to keep a queen excluder with every hive. This way we don't have to worry about bringing them somewhere else to store them or anything like that, and we know when we come back in the spring and we need excluders again, there'll be one ready to go in this hive. So that's just kind of what we do at Tech Transfer. So I've got my inner cover, my excluder, and there she is.
Something you'll likely see if you have high mite levels is deformed wing virus. This virus is usually spread to bees when Varroa mites feed on them as pupae. You can see they have shriveled, shrunken, deformed wings. This is one of the harsh realities of Varroa mite infestation that is out of control.
At Tech Transfer, because we have a lot of hives, we do barrel feeding, which is also called open feeding. So barrel feeding is great when you have a lot of colonies because you don't need to buy an individual feeder for each hive and set that up, which will take a lot of time. The only thing about barrel feeding is that it does have a lot of biosecurity risks that are associated with it, especially if you don't follow some best management practices that are available to limit those biosecurity risks. So when we're barrel feeding, we always want to make sure that we're only giving them an appropriate amount of syrup for the number of hives in the yard so that they can take it down very quickly. So when there's too much syrup available to them, then they can't take it down very quickly, and that starts to attract bees from colonies that are outside of your operation, so from your neighbor's bees, or from, you know, a swarm that's living in a tree somewhere, bees like that, and you don't know what is going on with them in terms of pest and disease issues. So you don't know if they're coming from an operation where people are monitoring and treating for different pests and diseases. So they can definitely introduce pest and disease issues to your operation. If they come, they're all in this barrel mingling with bees from your operation, and they can pass pests and diseases between colonies that way. So in order to limit that, we want to make sure that we're only feeding an appropriate amount. So if you only have a couple of hives, then getting a big barrel is definitely not the right choice for you. The second thing that we do is that we open the barrels one at a time. So that way they can take what's there down really, really quickly. So we have a magic number for how much sugar syrup every colony needs in the fall. So that magic number is 15 liters per hive. It doesn't matter if it's a single or a double. And 15 liters is equivalent to 4 gallons per hive. So you want to make sure that every hive is hitting that 15 liter or 4 gallon target. So to do that, you want to make sure that you're getting enough syrup for the yard. So each barrel, this is a 40-gallon barrel, which means that it can feed 10 colonies. So we have more than 10 colonies in this yard, so we need more than one barrel, but we're only going to open them up one at a time, again to limit those biosecurity risks so that they can take down the barrel quickly, avoid robbing from other bees. We opened this barrel a few days ago, and they've taken it down quite quickly. Oh, this brick has a nice big wasp on it. I think that's a paper wasp. Very fun. So be careful of all of the bees and wasps that are here to get at this barrel. But for the most part, they're so focused on getting the syrup that they don't really care that much about what I do. So it's important to make sure that if you're going to be open feeding or barrel feeding, that your colonies are strong enough to actually be able to take down the syrup quickly. So you can see that this is totally dry inside. They've taken it all down. Like we already showed you, we put some straw in it to prevent bees from drowning. You can see that a few still have. That's kind of the unfortunate reality, but a lot of drowning was prevented because we did have the straw in. So this one is totally empty, so we're gonna open the next barrel. We are opening our second barrel now. So we get our syrup delivered. You can see all the dead wasps that I think we must have been getting in while he was filling the barrel. But we got all of our syrup delivered from our supplier, which is really handy, especially because we have a lot of hives. We would have to spend a lot of time making our own sugar syrup if we were to do it ourselves. So if you have a lot of hives, then that might be a good option for you, looking into getting your sugar syrup commercially. If you only have a few hives, it's really quite easy to make. Only 2 ingredients, sugar and water. But yeah, even if you aren't going to be barrel feeding, you could still consider getting a barrel from a commercial source and then filling your feeders from the barrel so that you don't have to go to the trouble of making all of this sugar syrup yourself, which can be a very sticky job. You can also buy pre-made sugar syrup in different quantities. It doesn't have to just be this 40-gallon barrel, which is quite a lot. So even if you are running a smaller operation, then buying syrup could still be a good option for you. So when we're barrel feeding, we always want to put some straw sitting in a nice layer on the top here, because you can see there's a few bees and some wasps that are getting in and drowning already. We want to prevent that. This will just give them something to hold on to. I'm just going to put a bunch in, and then I'm going to use my stick to kind of push it down into the syrup. I'm going to be filling my HIVE-TOP feeders with this, so I'm just gonna dunk it in. This is the kind of job that you should definitely wear clothes that you don't care if they get sticky, because you are going to get sticky. All right, so I have my pail, and I'm gonna head over to the hive and put her in. Okay, so in the fall, we recommend that you use either a HIVE-TOP feeding method or barrel feeding, because those methods, they will require the least amount of effort from you. You won't have to go back and fill, say, a tiny little Boardman feeder a whole bunch of times to get to that magic number of 15 liters or 4 gallons. So something like a pail feeder or a HIVE-TOP feeder or chimney feeder, which we're going to be talking about, you will still have to likely refill them at least once, but you won't have to come back and fill them a whole bunch of times. You also, if it's getting colder, you don't have to crack the brood chamber in order to refill them, which right now the temperature is totally fine, it's not a big deal, but if it were colder or if the weather was really bad, then it's nice to not have to crack that inner cover and let all the cold in and make the bees work harder at this critical time of year. Okay, so I'm going to show you the pail method first. So for the pail method, you'll need a pail that has holes in the lid. So you can either buy one from a bee supply store or you can make one yourself like we did. We clearly just drilled several little holes in the top of the lid. So they don't need to be big holes at all. Smaller is definitely better because you don't want the syrup to be, raining down on your bees and getting them all wet. They won't be able to regulate their temperature when they're wet, so you don't want that. All right, so I'm going to put my lid on. So you want to make sure you know the size before you start feeding so that you know how much syrup it can hold, so you know how many times that you have to refill it. So be aware of the size when you are making your decisions about feeding. So to do pail feeding, you need an inner cover that has a hole, because that is how the bees are actually going to access the syrup. So I'm going to put it down with the entrance facing up for now. In the winter, it's really important to make sure that your hives all have a top entrance, but for now, just because we're feeding and it's not quite winter yet, they're not clustering, it's not as big a deal. All right, so you're going to turn this upside down, and at first a bunch might come out, but then after it's been upside down for a little bit, it's going to form kind of a vacuum seal, so it won't all come pouring out, it'll just drip out slowly and the bees will be able to come up through that hole from the brood chamber and access it. So you just want to make sure that the holes in your lid are kind of lined up with the holes on your inner cover. You can see there's a bit of syrup coming out. All right, so that's all you have to do is put it on upside down and make sure that those holes are aligned with the hole in your inner cover. And then, because this is very exposed, not very safe, I'm going to put an empty brood chamber around it, just so that no raccoons or strong winds or anything like that can come and knock it over, just to make it more secure. I'm going to shake the bees off of my inner cover because they won't be able to get in through here. I'm going to put my inner cover on and then my lid and just close her up like you normally would. If you don't have the second inner cover, if you just don't have enough inner covers to put another one here, that's no big deal. You can just throw your lid directly on top without the inner cover. Doesn't matter for this feeding setup. So you'll want to come back in a few days and check how much that they have taken down, and if you need to refill it again to get to your magic number, your 15 liters or 4 gallons, then you'll want to do that. So going to put your lid on, inner cover, no inner cover, and then you want a nice heavy brick or rock or two to put on top just for that extra security. So another great option for fall feeding is a HIVE-TOP feeder or a chimney feeder like this. So as you can see, there's two parts to this one. These come in different styles, but this one has this wood and mesh cage. So I'm going to place this directly on top of the brood chamber. The bees are going to be able to climb up through this space here from the brood chamber. If we were just to leave this open, the bees would get in and they would unfortunately drown in the syrup because they are not very good swimmers and they would just get stuck. So this cage, it prevents them from actually being able to get into the pool of syrup. So I'll just put it down. But you can see that there's these little wooden slats in it, and that's where the syrup is actually accessible to the bees, because they can come up through the chimney and then drink the syrup that's coming in through these little wooden holes there. So again, they come in all different styles and sizes, so make sure that you know how much yours holds, so you know how many times you have to fill it in order to hit your magic number. Also, if you have a different style that doesn't have the cage, there's some styles where the bees just come up from the middle and they can access kind of the reservoir of syrup and there's no cage involved. Then just like with the barrels, I would stick some straw in the syrup so that they have something to hold on to. It's kind of a little life raft for them and they won't fall in and drown. So just going to pour your syrup in. So fill it more than this. Fill it up as much as you can, but just be aware that it's not pouring in over the chimney. Again, you don't want syrup raining down on your bees and getting them wet. They won't be able to thermoregulate properly when they're wet, so that is something to avoid at all cost. But yeah, just fill it as much as it'll hold without going over the chimney or spilling anywhere else as well. So something that you might notice is that this palette is definitely not very even. It's kind of leaning in this direction, so the syrup is a lot deeper on this side than it is over here. So if it gets to a certain point where they've taken it down enough, then there's going to be a bunch of syrup left over here that they aren't actually going to be able to access because there are no little holes in the wood over here for them to get to. So you'd want to make sure that your hive is kind of even. You could put a brick or a rock or something underneath so that the syrup is sitting evenly in the feeder, so they'll be able to have continuous access to it no matter how much they take down. So I'm going to close her up. I'm going to put my inner cover back on. So we have the kind of inner cover that has a little entrance at the top. We're going to flip it the other way so that the entrance is not open, because if the entrance was open, then you'd get all kinds of wasps and bees from other colonies coming and robbing out all of your syrup, and the colony that you're actually trying to feed wouldn't even get any syrup because you would just get robbed out by all the other bees. So that's not what you want. Make sure that your entrance is closed and there's no other, I don't know, random holes in the box or anything like that. And you're going to put your lid on top. Again, we're going to put some bricks on top. Raccoons really like sugar syrup, so we want to do everything possible to try and keep those raccoons out. And we're going to come back and check in a few days to see how much they've taken down. The only thing that you might want to watch for is if the sugar syrup starts to crystallize around the wooden holes there, then they won't be able to access it even if there is still liquid sugar in the feeder, because the holes are all clogged up with that crystallized, that drier sugar. So that's something to be on the lookout for. Come back every couple of days and check that out. And you can just scrape it down if it is starting to crystallize around the cage.
Hey everybody, so today we're going to be making sugar syrup for fall feeding. When you're going to buy your sugar, you want to be targeting white refined sugar. Avoid sugars like organic cane sugar or any other unrefined molasses type sugar. Those sugars have debris in them that's going to be very hard for the bees to digest, and it's going to give them dysentery over winter. So for the winter feed, white refined sugar is the best food source you can give your bees, so make sure you're getting the white refined sugar. When you're going around finding deals at this time of year, you can generally find good sales on for sugar, so you can generally find it for about $1 a kilogram, and that's especially true if you have a Costco membership. This big bag here is available at Costco. It's 20 kilograms and it's about $20. I think a normal 2 kilogram is about $2.50 if it's not on sale. So if you're just making a few batches for a small number of hives, even that is not too bad. So we're gonna mix it today. When we're mixing, it's going to be a lot easier if you use warm to hot water. That's going to allow your sugar to dissolve a lot faster. You're going to put a lot of sugar in the water, so having that warmed up is really going to help it go a lot quicker. You can see today I just have a little stir stick, so as I'm pouring in the sugar, I'm going to be stirring. You're going to have to stir for quite a while to make sure that all of the sugar is dissolved and actually contained in the water, not just sinking down to the bottom. About 10-15 minutes depending on the temperature of your water, you're going to be stirring it for. If you're just stirring a couple batches, maybe doing it by hand isn't the worst idea for you, but if you want to set something up like a drill that can spin the syrup for you, you can set something mechanized up like that. So we'll get going here. I already have 10 liters of water in this bin. You can see the level is measured down here, and it's nice and warm, ready for the sugar. So I'm going to dump this bag in. I might not do it all at once. I'll probably pour a little bit, stir it up, and then pour another batch in, just to make it easier on me to stir it. Now, something to always remember when you're making sugar syrup is that I started with 10 liters of water, but I'm going to end up with more than 10 liters of sugar syrup. So make sure that you're stirring in a bigger container than what your original water holds. And then just keep stirring. There is a site online that calculates how much sugar to water that you need to use. So you can see it's quite a light color right now. If you dip your finger in it, you can sort of feel the grains of sugar against your fingers. So you want to keep stirring until it feels smooth. And then the syrup itself will get clear. You'll be able to see right through it. It'll be this sort of yellowish color, but you'll probably be able to see through more than you can right now anyway. So I can still feel the crystals there, so I'm going to keep stirring. Okay, so we've been stirring now for about 10 minutes or so. If you come look at the color, you can see it's cleared up just a little bit. You could even stand to mix this a little bit longer, but that's pretty good. As long as you don't have a lot of sugar crystallizing on the bottom, you're making sure that it's all suspended and dissolved in the water, that's what you're looking for. So now it's ready to be divvied up into jugs or taken out into the yard to fill up your feeders there. When you are making sugar syrup for the fall, you want a nice thick syrup. So make it 2-to-1 sugar to water by weight, which equals out to about 1 liter of water to 2 kilograms of sugar. So today I'll be making a bunch of sugar syrup. So I started with 10 liters of warm water, and I'm dumping this entire bag of 20 kilograms of sugar in it.